Good day, students. Welcome to mathgotserved.com. In this clip, we're going to be going over part 2 on our polynomial series, focusing on how to divide polynomials by long division. So for this example, let's assume that we are to divide a polynomial 4x to the fourth minus 9x cubed minus 36x squared minus 22x minus 10. We're to divide this by the polynomial 4x plus 7. Okay, you might wonder what's the difference between this example and the example we did in part 1 of this polynomial division series. Well, the difference lies in the fact that we have a coefficient for x. In the other example, the coefficient of x was just 1, but in this case we have a scenario where a is not equal to 1. So how does it affect the whole process? It just makes the process slightly more complicated. Okay? Now let's go ahead and indicate what the components of this problem are. Let's start by stating what the dividend is. The dividend is 4x to the fourth minus 9x to the third minus 36x squared minus 22x minus 10. So what you're going to divide is the dividend. What you're dividing by is known as your divisor. In this case, it is 4x plus 7. Now let's go ahead and carry out the division process. I'm going to go ahead and set it up. We're going to place the dividend inside the division bar. We have 4x to the fourth minus 9x cubed minus 36x squared minus 22x minus 10. And the divisor goes on the outside, which is 4x plus 7. Okay, so as we did in the previous tutorial, we're going to take a look at this binomial divisor and the first two terms of our dividend. Okay, so we're going to attack this problem two at a time. Examining those two, we'll ask ourselves, how many times does 4x go into 4x to the fourth, the leading term of this first two? Let's go ahead and work it out. To do this, we are simply going to divide 4x to the fourth by the leading term of our divisor, which is 4x. Okay, so what is 4x to the fourth divided by 4x? 4x to the fourth divided by 4x, we divide the 4's, 4 goes into each other once. X to the fourth divided by x to the 1, you simply subtract coefficients. So just cancel this out, subtract 1, and you have x to the third. Okay, what we're going to do now is place x to the third on the cube column. So x to the third will be placed right here. All the terms that are to the third degree of the cubes column will be placed in this column right here. Now what we'll do next is take this quotient and we're going to distribute it to 4x and 7. We'll place our answer right underneath 4x to the fourth minus 9 and subtract. Okay, let's carry out the multiplication. X to the third times 4x times 4x is 4x to the fourth. X to the third times positive 7 is positive 7x to the third. If you carry out this process correctly, the first two terms must be identical. Okay? Now think about division as repeated subtraction. So what we're going to do now is subtract this factor from the dividend polynomial. So let's go ahead and subtract that. Remember, we're dealing with it two at a time. So let's subtract. Now think about subtraction as adding the opposite. Now to subtract, we're going to distribute this minus across these two terms here. Okay, so when we do that, this minus becomes a plus. 4x to the fourth becomes a negative. And then this positive right here becomes a negative. Now we're going to combine downwards. The first two terms cancel out. Negative 9x cubed minus 7x cubed is negative 16x to the third. Now since we're dealing with our division process with two terms at a time, we have only one term here. We have to bring down the next term in the order of degrees, okay? So bring down negative 36x squared. Now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat the process again. We're going to ask ourselves, how many times does 4x go into negative 16x to the third? To answer this question, we'll just execute the following division process. Negative 16x to the third divided by 4x. 4 goes here once, 4 goes into 16 4 times. X to the first power goes into x to the third. You just subtract 1 x to the second times. So we have negative 4x to the second power. We'll position this component of our quotient polynomial on top on the squares column. So we have negative 4x squared. Now what we're going to do now is take negative 4x squared. Notice we're taking not just the term, but the term with its sign. We're going to distribute it across 4x and positive 7. Okay? Now let's carry out the multiplication. Negative 4x squared times 4 is negative 16x to the third. Negative 4x squared times positive 7 is negative 28x squared. So we're going to do what now? We are going to subtract again. Remember, division is repeated subtraction of factors. So we're going to subtract. Now to subtract these two, view it as though you're adding the opposite. So we'll distribute this minus across these two terms here. So this becomes a plus. This minus becomes a plus. And this minus becomes a plus. Subtraction is adding the opposite. Alright, so these two combine to 0. Negative 36x squared plus 28x squared. If you combine it, you get negative 8x squared. And then we will bring down the next term in the descending order of degrees. Negative 22x, because we're dividing 2 at a time. Okay? Now what do? We repeat the same process again. We're going to keep going until we get to the end, alright? We'll ask ourselves, how many times does 4x go into negative 8x squared? So to do that, let's carry out our division on the side here. We have 8x squared negative, let's not forget the sign. Divide that by 4x. 4 goes into itself once, 4 goes into 8 2 times. And then x to the 1 goes into x squared is minus 1. So our answer is going to be negative 2x to the first power. Okay, we position that answer on the first degree column, negative 2x, and then we'll distribute as we did before. Negative 2x times positive 4x is negative 8x squared. And then we distribute negative 2x to positive 7, and that gives us negative 14x. Okay? Now we're going to subtract again, as we did in the previous two steps. So let's subtract this factor. Now when we're subtracting, is the same thing as adding the opposite, so we'll go ahead and distribute this minus across these two terms. So this becomes a plus, this becomes a plus, and this becomes a plus also. Now let's add downwards. This cancel out, so you have negative 8x as your difference. Okay? Now we need two terms to divide, so what do? We pull down the last term, the constant, negative 10, and then we execute the same division process again. Okay? Now, question. How many times does 4x go into negative 8x? Let's carry out our calculations on the side. We have negative 8x divided by 4x. The x's divide out. 4 goes into itself once, 4 goes into 8 two times, multiply across. You get negative 2 as your answer. Now let's position negative 2 in the constant or 0-degree column. And now we're going to distribute negative 2 across these two terms. Negative 2 times 4x is 8x. Actually, negative 8x. Negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. Now what do? Finally, we are going to subtract again. And then we don't have any terms to bring down. We are at the end, so the final difference will be our remainder. Subtracting is the same thing as adding the opposite. Let's go ahead and distribute. This becomes a plus, plus, and plus. When you combine downwards, negative 10 plus 14 is positive 4. Okay, so let's go ahead and write down what our answer is. We can express our answer in two formats. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at them. We can either say our answer is x squared minus x cubed minus 4x squared minus 2x minus 2 plus the remainder divided by the divisor, 4x plus 7. This is one way you can express it. Or you can say x to the third minus 4x squared minus 2x minus 2 remainder 4. Okay? Now in this answer set up here, it shows us that the quotient is x to the third minus 4x squared minus 2x minus 2. That's the division. The answer component without the remainder is the quotient, and the remainder is what's left down here. Okay, so our remainder is 4. Question: is our divisor 4x plus 7 a factor of the original dividend polynomial? Let's address that. Factor or not? The answer is no. 4x plus 7 is not a factor. Okay, 4x plus 7 is not a factor of the dividend. How do we know that? Because we have a remainder. We have a remainder that's not 0. Okay, so if the remainder was 0, then the divisor is a factor. But if you have a non-zero remainder, then that divisor is not a factor. Okay, so let's write that down. 4x plus 7 is not a factor of the dividend since the remainder is not equal to 0. We have a non-zero remainder. Okay, so this is how you divide polynomials using the long division algorithm. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. We really appreciate it. If you found the contents of this tutorial helpful in your study of polynomial functions, do give us a thumbs up. Your positive feedback is very valuable to us. If you have any questions or comments about the contents of this presentation or any Algebra 2 or pre-calc questions or concepts in general, just place your questions in the comment section below and we will be more than glad to support you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for updates to other math tutorials such as this. We upload videos on a weekly basis, so if you subscribe you get notifications about our updates and uploads. And do visit our website at mathgotserved.com for access to more support tools in your study of mathematics. Thanks again for watching and have a wonderful day.